Hello. We're just going to give a few seconds for others to join us here. All right. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Today's webinar is about synergy of marketing and AI, strategies for success. Today I have Stephen Banbury here, and he'll go ahead and introduce his co-host. Thank you.
Thanks, Brianne. Yeah, delighted to be here. Thanks for joining us today. I'm delighted to be hosting the webinar. And actually today I'm being joined by a former colleague and seasoned marketing professional, Ryan Jensen. So Ryan, delighted you are with me for this. Perhaps you could just take a moment and introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, Stephen and I had the opportunity to work together at reputation.com not too long ago. So my background is been in B2B marketing, primarily in the areas of growth and operations. So understanding where that product market fit is, how you come up with an appropriate strategy and message for that person, and then how to leverage certain pieces of technology and process to be able to do that at scale. And so this is a wonderful topic for me because AI certainly facilitates that kind of motion.
That's great. Thank you. So let me dive into the agenda. So I'll do a quick introduction around sort of AI and that marketplace and the synergies with marketing. And then we'll go into the topics around data-driven automation and enhancing the customer experience. Both Ryan and I will look at a couple of use cases and the real world examples for that. And then hopefully we'll have time for a Q&A or at least a couple of questions. So please send those in and Brianne will actually capture those as we go through this presentation. So let me start with the landscape and really why this is so important. And since 2019, there's actually been wider public accessibility to Gen AI tools and platforms. And with the success of models like OpenAI's DALL-E, actually the first DALL-E in 2020, generative AI models have become more refined, and we saw a massive increase in adoption with the release of ChatGPT back in less than a year ago, actually, back in the end of November 2022. And as you can see, the adoption outstripped any application before, from TikTok to Instagram, Pinterest, Spotify, etc. So in less than 2 months, they had over 100 million users. And today that's well over 170 million users. So the pace of change has been pretty substantial. Sonia Hung from Sequoia Capital posted this out on what formerly known as Twitter, X, back in October last year. And as you can see, the landscape that she pulled together was pretty, I mean, not tiny, but small. And then when you look at September of this year, you can see just the explosion in the amount of applications and tools in this space. And this doesn't even include things like the infrastructure and some of the other tools that support it. So, you know, I think you're probably familiar with like the MarTech landscape. It's getting that way, and not surprising when you see the billions of dollars that are actually being invested in generative AI and the applications in that space. So marketing and AI, so I think about it as like a dynamic duo in many ways. And the list here is a list that was compiled by the Marketing AI Institute. And they published last year the State of Marketing and Sales AI report. They asked a number of marketing people to essentially look at 50 different use cases and actually rank those in terms of importance. Now, to be fair, there's obviously more than 50 use cases for marketers. In fact, there's hundreds, probably thousands of those. But of those, these were the top 10 that they came back with. And interestingly, 4 of these, when you look through these, are actually classified as dealing with content marketing, and 4 actually as analytic cases. So marketing and AI, obviously a bunch of use cases when you look at that. So let's set the scene a bit about marketing and the growth there. So let's look at data-driven decision making. So simply put, I would say AI unlocks invaluable insights from data that's too large and complex for humans to easily analyze. And so this enabled us to be more informed and forward-looking across industries. And these are just some of the industry examples that I thought of that are actually utilizing AI. So if we look at a couple of these, so if you look at the transportation industry, for example, Uber leverages AI to forecast rider demand across locations. And you've probably seen this if you use Uber or even Lyft. And so you see this surge pricing that incentivize drivers to go to locations where there's going to be more demand. And for healthcare, AI tools are used to analyze medical records and diagnosis data to identify trends, essentially so that they can, provide better preventative care and resource planning. And when you think about this in just marketing terms, you see AI impacting in terms of predictive lead scoring, ad targeting, dynamic pricing, similar to the Uber example I just mentioned, customer satisfaction, campaign optimization, and multi-touch attribution, all of these utilizing AI in the marketing function. So to go one step deeper into marketing, let me hand it over to Ryan, and he's going to talk about an example of identifying and how to essentially reach out to your ideal customer profile. So over to you, Ryan.
Sure. And what's really exciting about this, when Stephen was going through the examples, I'm going to just pause and talk about how it's applicable for me. So some of the examples that I share today are going to be examples of things that we're currently doing within my team, where I'm at, and others are examples of what we would like to be doing, future state. These are things that would really drive value. But at the end of the day, it's machine learning. You need to have the data, and then once you train the data, you've got algorithms that are able to detect patterns and make predictions, and that's really cool for people that have had a data science background. You understand that it can be really difficult to structure your data and get it to a point where you can actually do an analysis. So if you're in marketing and you want to do a conjoint analysis to understand what characteristics your product should be highlighting. Back in the day, that was very difficult, time-consuming, arduous, required a lot of different people. And what's really exciting now is if you can get the data, the AI is able to train on that data and give you insights that otherwise would have taken a long time and a lot of effort. And for me, in the world of growth, the first thing that you always want to do is understand how big is that market that you're trying to reach, based on what your specialty or niche is. How many more of those types of customers based on your best customers can you identify? And in the past, like I said, you're having to cull through mountains of data in, let's say, Salesforce to look at things like deal sizes, close rates, having to deal with customer success to get things like NPS scores or customer sentiment and financial data, and then having to bring together all those disparate groups together to say, what does our ideal customer profile look like? And then now taking that information, how do we come up with a program to reach more of those type of people? But what's cool with tools like 6sense, and this is the example that I'm going to use, you're able to do that in such an accelerated, automated fashion because you're able to bring in a lot of those data points. What are the characteristics of your ideal customer? Whether that's, your typical, demographic or psychographic information or even financial data, and put that into the solution and then create segments that will now alert you to when somebody that fits that similar profile is showing intent, whether it's by visiting your website or by searching for keywords associated with your category. And now what's really cool is not only can you alert your sales team in real time, but you can also automate campaigns to do some nice marketing air cover in the form of ads within LinkedIn, within Google and other platforms, and really start to get ahead of the curve, and it enables you to dial in your dollars. So instead of just spending your money nondescriptly on a bunch of different things, you're able to get more laser focused, because ultimately these types of efforts are enabling you to dial in on exactly who is the right party and is that right party showing intent. And so for me, that's a gold mine, because marketing dollars are limited, and in today's environment, that's even more so the case. And so this tool enables me to spend the right dollars on the right kind of activities with the right people. So that is a really great case study that I'm excited about. Back to you, Stephen.
Yeah, that's great. That's super insight. Tools like Sixth Sense have done a really good job of incorporating AI into its platform. And I think for marketing people, when you look at your MarTech stack, many of those are actually utilizing AI already. And so, you know, how do you get more familiar with that to maximize your investment? I've certainly found that there's a lot of MarTech in the companies that you work for, not all of them are being used to their fullest. So super insightful. Let me dive in with Ryan now about automating some of the routine tasks. So again, going back to the State of Marketing and Sales IR report, 74% of respondents said that, you know, more of a quarter of their tasks are going to be intelligently automated over the next 5 years. And this is actually quite an increase from what they're actually like, how they're using it today. And actually 41% of the marketers anticipate over half of their tasks are going to be automated in the next 5 years. So a big increase there. And I'm going to give an example around Zoom. And then I know Ryan's going to talk about a couple more real life examples. So Zoom released, and I know whether you're using Team or Google Chat or Huddle, or we're using Zoom today, so we're all pretty familiar with this tool, certainly during the pandemic and post-pandemic. They've released new functionality with their AI companion release. And it's pretty interesting. And if you don't have access to this, it's probably because your IT system administrator hasn't actually like released it yet. But that's something they could do. So you could play around with it, but you can jump in. If you joined a meeting late, so for example, this webinar, you could ask it to catch me up on things that I've missed. You could say, hey, did they mention my name? Was Stephen mentioned? In what context was I mentioned? And they would keep you up to date. In addition to that, it actually helps you compose chats within the meeting. It actually composes and replies to emails, as well as recapping and identifying action items during the meeting, which is pretty cool. So, you know, as you think about, I had a meeting with Brianne in anticipation of this webinar, and post-webinar, it actually generated a summary of what we discussed and action items and emailed that to me with little to no interaction from Brianne. So I definitely recommend you play with this. If you haven't got this switched on, maybe try and get your administrator to give you access. But again, you know, the days of note-taking and putting action items, I think for something like Zoom are probably long gone, but you know, I'm a terrible multitasker. So actually I can just focus on the meeting in hand, which is a way better use of my time. So that's a very recent release, actually last month. And there's going to be, you know, across all these tools, there's going to be more and more functionality built in to these applications. So Ryan, perhaps you can talk to this Sixth Sense email example.
Yeah, so this is something that we're investigating right now, and you know, other tools like SalesLoft do something very similar. But you know, at its heart is it's automating a lot of the work that goes into some of these outbound cadences that we're all familiar with that are enabled through SalesLoft, Outreach, Salesforce cadences, et cetera. So when you think about the typical outbound sequence that you have to build, one, there's a lot of work up front to figure out how do we segment the data to be able to trigger the right responses? So an example of that could be somebody that's been in a lead status of attempted to contact for more than 14 days, and then you trigger maybe some spear messaging to be able to wake that person up to get a demo booked. Or there's people, segment might be a lost opportunity based on certain criteria. So you've got the work that goes up front there. Then you've also got to connect with hopefully marketing to get you some nice impactful messaging that's on point that can prompt a response. And then you've got to be able to be situationally aware to know if this response happens based on response I get from a person, maybe follow up with this. And that takes a lot of time. And what you're able to do is it automates a bunch of that so that you can input what your goals are, who your audience is, and then it's able to be contextually aware to where you're able to see if this person responds this way, we can send a response automated. So instead of having to build kind of that hard and fast logic, you're able to be a little more flexible and responsive. And so this is something that we're currently, in the process of trying to better understand. But the promise of that is great because I can't tell you how much time my team, my content team has to spend on leveraging things like the SaaS Academy materials to come up with really good, impactful messaging when something like this in concert with maybe a little bit of ChatGPT can help really take a lot of time and effort out of their day to be able to do this at scale and at speed. And then another routine task is SEO. So, the website, I speak from experience and most of you probably agree, but organic searches to your website typically are your best converting leads. Those are the ones that have the highest likelihood to turn into an opportunity and close because they're looking for you and they're demonstrating intent. So you need to spend a lot of time to make sure that you are getting top of full first page present on Google, Bing, or whatever search engine you're targeting, and very competitive depending on what space you're in and what keywords you're going after. And so a lot of time traditionally is spent on developing things like meta descriptions, meta tags, and other things because those still are important facets to your SEO strategy. And here's an example that our team does where, just a typical page where we say, hey, you can give it broad guidance. And in this case, we're asking ChatGPT to give us a meta description and it responds great. And we give it some information of what we're trying to accomplish and what that page is focused on. And within seconds, we get a very nice, impactful meta description that we could drop right into the HTML that otherwise probably would have taken, even a seasoned, marketing content writer, probably 20, 30 minutes to come up with something that would work. And so, great. The examples I've shared are data, leveraging data for insights. And then the other great thing is tasks. I mean, both of these examples are very time-intensive tasks that AI really speeds up and does so typically in a very good manner that requires very little editing after the fact.
Thanks, Ryan. That's it's just a great tool. Let me forward to CX, so enhancing the customer experience. So AI aims to make customer interactions with brands smoother, more intuitive, and certainly more tailored to the individual experiences and needs. And so here are some very well-known brands that are utilizing AI in slightly different ways, but all using them. So let me pick on Domino's Pizza, for example. So Domino's Pizza has an AI-powered chatbot that's actually called Dom. So some very creative thinking about the naming there. But Dom lets customers order pizzas directly from Facebook Messenger or through voice commands. Brands like Netflix and Amazon clearly using recommendation engines to drive sales and engagement. What I actually didn't realize in the case of Netflix is it's estimated that 80% of the content watched on Netflix actually comes from its recommendation system, which I found pretty stunning. When you look at Spotify and Airbnb, for example, they're leveraging personalization algorithms. An example for me, at least for like Spotify, is that it creates a weekly playlist where it's offering me songs based on, what I like and my listening history. And IKEA, they're actually using not just AI, but using augmented reality. So with their app, you can actually look, and when you look at your own home, you can see what the furniture actually looks like within your own space, which is pretty amazing. So I know Macy's uses IBM Watson. So all of these are using AI to create better customer experiences across the board. Another AI tool that customers or brands are using is actually sentiment analysis. So let me talk a little bit more about this one. In this example, healthcare providers, and it's not just healthcare providers, it could be retailers, it could be car manufacturers and dealerships and property management companies, but providers such as Banner Health and Kindred, they use a platform, reputation.com's, they actually use their natural language processing platform to break down customer sentiment and analyze the feedback and social mentions to highlight trends and topics in real time. So for a healthcare provider, they're looking not just for feedback in one instance, which could be, how was your doctor's appointment? They're actually looking across the whole patient experience. So, could you find parking easily? What was that experience like? Was checking in easy? Was the waiting time easy? Maybe you used a restroom. Was the restrooms clean? How was your interaction with the doctor? How was your checkout? How was that process? And then what was the post-doctor follow-up like? And so in real time, whether it's through Twitter or Facebook or some type of survey, they can actually react to the customer sentiment around, is this a good experience or bad experience? So, very simply for me, customer experience is, listen to your customer, hear what they have to say, understand it, and take action on it. And you can see there's actually like a sentiment map here where you can see, feedback on customer service. This is actually around property management, this particular map. But I think it does a really good job of giving the brands the full customer journey and experience as they see it and how they feel those interactions are going. I don't know if you wanted to pile on to that because you obviously have experience with this platform, Ryan.
Yes, what I really like about it is the fact that it can leverage insights from unstructured data. So typically, if you're involved in trying to understand customer sentiment, you're relying on an NPS score or a survey through a tool like Qualtrics, which is very formal and requires a little bit of time and effort. But what's cool about this is it grabs all of that, just random comments from, a Twitter feed or email conversations, and it gives you a more broad and a more depth in terms of understanding what sentiment is and how people are seeing your brand. And I think that's where tools like this and AI in general can really help out because it really expands your reach and being able to understand how customers feel about you. And I know that was a question that we'll maybe get to in a little more depth later about psychographics and sentiment. And a tool like this or certain chatbots are able to do that. They're able to sense if I make a snarky comment and treat it as such and be able to respond accordingly.
Yeah, that's right. And actually on the psychographics, there's tools like we mentioned IBM Watson, for example, in the case of Macy's. There's Crystal, Affinio, Brandwatch, and I think a bunch of other tools too. So maybe we can package that up and send it to the person that asked that question, Ryan. So just email me after the webinar. So what's the future for marketers? And a question might be, is there a future for marketers with AI and certainly Gen AI? And so This quote I took from Paul Rotzer from the Marketing AI Institute. And actually, originally it came from a doctor from a hospital in Pennsylvania. And it's AI won't replace marketers, but marketers who use AI will replace marketers who don't, which I thought was very prescient. And you could take that marketer's function and you could replace it with customer service manager, sales. I think you could, in fact, it was originally used for radiologists by this particular doctor. So there is no guide and there is no manual for many of these tools like ChatGPT and others. So I would strongly encourage you to, if you haven't already started, to spend time experimenting with this technology and create your own use cases. I actually think it's, we all will have our own use cases depending on what our function is within marketing or outside marketing. And I think it's an opportunity to become the change agent within your business or your function, to be the one that sort of drives the next frontier in digital transformation. So if you haven't started, I would dive into it. And I would also encourage you, if you have a team, to get them to invest and spend time doing this as well. Any thoughts there, Ryan?
No, and what's cool about this is, Stephen and I are by no means experts on this. This is all, we're in the early stages of how this is being applied in mass. And so it's going to be really cool to see how the use cases expand, but they're going to be there. And so this is going to be the reality of our lives as marketers. And so we're coming up with new use cases, hopefully us and other practitioners, day to day, week to week. So this is just the beginning of it all.
Yeah, I think that's, we obviously had the question of psychographics and we threw out some names, and we can respond if someone can email me afterwards and we can put some more in. But we had a couple of questions which sort of tie into that, Ryan. The first one was, what's the coolest thing that you've seen so far as it relates to Gen AI or even just AI generally?
Well, like for me, I like that's the strategic side. And so the example that I gave with 6sense or other tools is really cool because there's so much data out there, and just having had to go through those go-to-market exercises that were really difficult, and to be able to leverage a tool like this instead of have to rely on, say a business analyst and 3 other roles is just really cool. And then on the content side, it's just really nice because I'm not, especially when you're writing marketing content, that can be a bit of a challenge for somebody like myself. And just to be able to to send that over to, a tool like chat is really cool. But, tools like Intercom or Drift chat, something that we're looking at right now because, in the past, you'd have to rely on a lot of elaborate decision trees and having materials available, but this enables you to once again have more flexibility and to have the AI understand somebody's sentiment and then be able to respond contextually, as opposed to have to anticipate that and then build a rote response to it. So I think those are examples that for me help me in my day-to-day. And granted, those examples are limited to me. As you guys do your own research based on where it is that you're trying to accomplish, you're going to find probably different examples that will have just as much impact.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other questions sort of ties into it, and I'll tell about my coolest thing, but was recommendations on tools and platforms you should be experimenting with. And as you could see from that market map, there are lots of tools from ChatGPT, Claude, GitHub Copilot, Midjourney, Firefly, Jasper, for example. If I was to pick one, it would be ChatGPT. They have a free version, but I would recommend you spend the $20 a month, whether it's for a month or 2 or 3 or forever. For that ChatGPT Plus, it's got or 4, and play around with that because it's got functionality so you can actually search through Bing. You can, it has this image generation tool from OpenAI called DALL-E 3. And what was very cool for me is I actually took a scrolled screen grab of a homepage, and I dropped that into Chat GPT, and I asked the question, how can you optimize this homepage for lead generation? And 30 seconds later, I had about 12 bullet points, Ryan, that actually told me and suggested ways in which I can improve it. So it read the image, all the text, and made suggestions, not just on like subject lines, making them maybe more value and benefit orientated versus feature and function, but around like the CTAs and placement of those, utilization of chatbots. So, if you're in the demand gen or website design, you would have got to all those bullets probably, but the fact that it actually generated that in less than a minute actually blew my mind, and was quite the experience for me. So beyond those new tools, you're probably using tools like HubSpot today that actually have AI built into them. So there's a Gen AI tool that I think you should play an experiment with, but actually look at the tools currently within your MarTech stack and get really savvy and smart with that AI that's built into those. So anything to add, Ryan?
No, and I would say, we're still in the early stages, so I'd still recommend that you do spend some time, and if you're creating content, for example, just to review it, because one thing to keep in mind with these types of tools is they're only good as the data that they're reading. And so one of the early criticisms so far is that these types of tools will just reinforce existing biases. So always, what my team does is, it's great to be able to develop content, but I always spend, a couple minutes just reading it, because you ultimately own and understand the strategy, and just spend a few minutes shaping it a little further to make sure that it absolutely is on brand and on point with what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I know we are a couple of minutes over. If you would like and haven't had the opportunity to ask questions to get those answers, please email me, Stephen@expertmarketingadvisors.com. I will do my best to answer that. I will forward that to Ryan as well, and we can get back to you on that. But thank you very much for joining us today. I know Brianne will be following up, and have fun and enjoy the journey of AI as that changes and hopefully improves our lives as we move forward. So thank you very much indeed, and I appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.